Avatar Meher Baba's Warning to His Lovers from 1957. After Meher Baba's second automobile collision near Satara on the 2nd of December 1956, he decided to spend some of the hot Indian summer in Poona. At the end of April, he began staying with some of the mandali in Guruprasad Palace, which had been offered for his use by Maharani Shanta Devi Gaikwad. Baba wished to hold a meeting in Guruprasad on Sunday, the 19th of May, 1957, with the mandali and his close male lovers from Ahmednagar, Poona and Bombay to issue a warning. 47 persons were called for the meeting, which began that day at 8 a.m. Digambar Gadekar and Bal Natu took notes. Baba asked those present whether they had slept well that night, adding that those who had not should not doze during the proceedings. He told them, "As for me, I had no sleep, for I had to do some important spiritual work. From the time of the accident, I have been continuously suffering severe physical pains. Tell me, from my face, how do I look now?" The majority said that Baba's face appeared as cheerful as ever. Moments later, Baba remarked, "You have been called here, but the question before me is, why have I called you, and what should I convey?" Everyone laughed. Baba asked the Poona workers to stand and inquired about those not invited. He instructed that those who were not invited should come to Guruprasad that day at 2 p.m. and leave after Baba had embraced them. Baba commented about his fractured hip and how well it was progressing. Dr. Deshmukh requested Baba to take care of his body, to which Baba replied, "I have come again and again in flesh and blood to bear the sufferings of humanity." After a few more preliminary statements, as Erich continued to interpret his gestures, Baba began. "I want to tell you one important thing which each of you must remember well. It is a fact that I am the Lord of the universe. I am omnipresent. Now the time is fast approaching, and I clearly see the dark cloud hovering. I see its picture. By this, I am not referring to the recent motor accident that has already come to pass. The humiliation that I was referring to for many years is within sight. During that phase of my life, there is every possibility that I may slip out of your hands. Now let me first explain what I mean by humiliation. Suppose you are loved by someone very dearly for several years, and one day when you happen to meet him, he suddenly begins to abuse you, kick you, and spit in your face. In the context of your previous relationship with him, your plight becomes an example of humiliation. In the same way, if some persons who have previously adored me and raised me up to the skies in adoration for years suddenly turn against me and express extreme disdain for me by throwing me in filth, it will be another example of humiliation. I will also give you an example of circumstances under which this kind of a thing can happen. You are worshipping me for so many years. Suppose you suddenly find me eating rubbish and roaming about naked in the streets, behaving like a madman. What will be your reaction to this behavior of mine? I don't want any one of you to think or say that Baba is going to become mad. On the contrary, I have come to make the whole world mad after God and truth. Only the avatar, whenever he lives amidst mankind, has to undergo humiliation. When there are 5 perfect masters, who are God personified, and who control and look after the affairs of the universe, what need is there for them to precipitate the incarnation of God on earth? They bring him down to shoulder the sufferings of humanity. The 5 perfect masters are not as much scandalized or humiliated as the avatar. I have been made to take this form by the 5 perfect masters of this age to bear the cross and to undergo humiliation. You have read in the Gospels wherein Christ had said to his apostles, "You will deny me." This did happen when Peter, the chief apostle, denied Jesus. The thing is that during the phase of humiliation, the circumstances will go so awry that you will not be aware when my daman has slipped out of your hands. At that time, you may even feel justified in leaving me. But if you feel that this should not happen, there is one remedy. You should grasp well all of what I say and understandingly live up to it. You should also tell everything that you hear today to those who are not present. In short, I clearly see the dark cloud. I don't wish to make a mere mention of the dark cloud without any reason, but this is my loving warning to you so that my daman may not slip out of your hands. Today, I also wish to tell you about some other important points. I will start with the topic of saints. These days, this point is often brought to my notice from the letters I receive from my lovers. Some write, "Baba, you often go into seclusion for long periods. Very rarely we get an opportunity to have your sahavas. We are not even allowed to have your darshan for months together." This often makes us feel inclined to visit saints and be in their company. They also ask me whether they should follow certain instructions given by the saints. A few days back, a wife of one of my devotees wrote to me that a certain person, who called himself a saint, told her that he was ordered by me to guard their house and that he loved me very much. Apart from the truth of this statement, the point which struck me is that if such things were to continue, anybody could approach my devotees and may even demand hundreds of rupees in my name and thus may easily deceive them. To declare whether a man is a real saint or an imitation is my right alone and not yours. At this point, one man interjected, "Baba, we go to saints because we have a feeling that you are in everyone." Baba replied, "I am also in a thief and a murderer. Then what is it that prevents you to respect and worship them? If you were to see me everywhere as I really am, there would be no need for you to go to saints, or even to come to me to pay your respects. I have been declaring all the time, age after age, that when I, the Ancient One, assume human form, there are many false prophets who claim themselves to be avatars. For instance, a week ago I received a letter from Uttar Pradesh. A devotee writes that there are 2 persons in his town and each proclaims himself as avatar of the age. This created a great deal of confusion in his mind. Also, in one of the towns in northern India, there is a social worker who claims, and has genuine feeling of his claim, that he is the avatar. I am telling you all these things in detail, for it is my right alone to say so, as all of them are my children. As far as you are concerned, you should neither criticize nor indulge in backbiting such persons. If you speak ill of a real saint, it will be harmful for you. You will create dreadful sanskaric bindings. You should avoid scandalizing even the so-called Mahatmas who call themselves saints, because it is not possible for you to be certain whether they are real or not. The presumptuous saints outwardly act like real saints. You will not be able to differentiate between them, just in the same way that you are not able to differentiate between the masts and mad persons. Yet, what a world of difference lies in their inner states. Coming back to the point of real saints, I would like you to know that to become a saint is not child's play. The very word saint, when commonly used or applied to anyone, creates a lot of misunderstanding. I will now tell you something that will clear up the misunderstandings regarding saints. There are two types of saints, real saints and imitation saints. Just as an ordinary person cannot distinguish between a real and an imitation pearl, you cannot distinguish between a real saint and an imitation saint. I alone, like a jeweler, can make out the difference. Particularly in India, we find a lot of imitation saints, and this is due to the superficial study of Vedanta. By studying Vedanta, one can say, I am God. Sadgurus also say, I am God. Imitation saints also say the same thing, but with the help of Vedanta. Real saints need no such help. They say what they experience. There are also some who, after reading Vedanta, realize that they have no such experience, but they still say, I am God. This is hypocrisy. There are also some imitation saints who, after reading Vedanta, have a genuine inner feeling and say, I am God, although in reality they have no conscious experience. If anyone confers greatness on you and begins to worship you and garland you, you know yourself that you do not deserve it. At the outset, you are tempted to accept this greatness which makes you feel happy, but your conscience will be consciously pricking you, and you will always be in a state of anxiety about future developments. You will frequently be in a fix either to accept or reject the greatness which is thrust on you. Once you accept this conferred greatness, it becomes very difficult for you to get out of the situation. After a time, the pricks of conscience even cease troubling you, for you get used to them. Then it becomes an addiction, and you cannot do without it. You then pose as a real saint. This posing will cause you to take additional innumerable births. So why pose as a saint without the inner experience? As for myself, I say I am the highest of the high. Had I not been the Ancient One, I would have encouraged you to visit the so-called saints. I would have even praised them, and they also would have praised me in return. In this way, a clique would be formed that would promote mutual praise to dupe the public. If any one of you meets an imitation saint or an imitation avatar, what would he say to you? He would say the same thing as I do. If you tell him that Baba is the avatar, he may even say, I am the real one and Meher Baba is a fraud. When anyone approaches an imitation saint and is attracted by the outward atmosphere which he creates about him, and if owing to his faith in the imitation saint he gets experiences, he is likely to attribute them to that imitation saint. This creates confusion. Now I'll tell you about an incident. During my last visit to America, a gentleman who has been staying in America for a long time remained by my side during some of my programs, and particularly when the films and photographs were taken. This gentleman has studied and intellectually grasped what I have said, but has misused it. From one of the letters from the USA, I hear that this gentleman has started telling people that he is Baba's representative. Those who know me for so many years are not affected, but the new lovers, though educated, are very much impressed and flock around him. Just see how even the Westerners are misled. What is the remedy for this? I will explain now. It will be very useful to you only if you grasp it thoroughly. If all of you are convinced that Baba is the avatar, God incarnate, the question of confusion does not arise at all. In this case, just hold fast to my Dhamman and close all doors to prevent confusion and conflict from entering your minds. If you are not convinced, leave me. Seek someone else. But if you try to stick to me with a wavering mind, without being convinced of my divinity, you would be just like a nut caught in the crusher. I will also tell you a few instances of those who pay too much attention to musts, though they have been connected with me for so many years. One of them even went to the extent of drinking toddy whenever offered by a must. Another one, Dr. Deshmukh, used to carry a certain must on his shoulders to his home and serve him daily. Had I not warned them in time, they would have gotten themselves seriously involved with those musts. When God Himself has descended on the earth and you have the fortune to come into personal contact with Him, why run after His children, the musts and the saints? In Uttar Pradesh and the Punjab, there are saints of both types, real and imitation. There, men put up a big show of spirituality by performing Homa Havan, Bhajan Kirtan, Yajna Yaga, Arti Puja, and so forth. From external appearance, one cannot make out who is a real saint and who is an imitation one. Anyone is easily impressed by the outward so-called spiritual atmosphere. You do not find such things here with me. Instead, you see me sitting among you, sometimes cutting jokes and letting you laugh. The real path is totally different from the conventional Bhajan Kirtan, Homa Havan, Sadra Kasti, Namaz Naza, etc. On the contrary, when one gets entangled in these rituals and ceremonies, one gets off the real path. When I tell you these things and ask you not to visit other saints, perhaps some of you may think, is Baba feeling jealous of others? But I, being one without a second, have no rival. I am matchless. I being the one reality, the question of rivalry does not arise at all. If at all I am to be jealous, I will have to be jealous of my own self. When a man sees an ant moving on the ground, will he ever feel jealous of it? Both the ant and the man move on the same level on the ground, but there is a world of difference in their consciousness. For instance, the ant can never understand the intricacies of this machine age. The ant, the ordinary man, and myself move on the same earth, but there is as much difference between the consciousness of an ordinary man and that consciousness of mine as there is between the consciousness of an ant and that of an ordinary man. Even in the animal kingdom, there is a vast difference between the consciousness of an ant and an elephant. Has an elephant ever purposely walked on an ant, feeling jealous of it? One of my devotees expressed an ardent desire to see a particular must of Bombay, while a few others appear much concerned about the claim made by someone else who asserts that he is the avatar of the age. This makes me curious why you, of all the persons who regard me as the highest of the high, should run after other personalities. Concerning this matter, Baba referred to and had an extract from a letter read out at this time, wherein he had stated, "No one is to be blamed. It is no one's fault. It was the original whim and the original urge of God that has started this divine game, which He can also enjoy at His own cost." Then Baba continued gesturing. I do not mean that there are no real saints in India. There are some well-known saints, and there are some real saints that are unknown to the masses. Compared with the known saints, these hidden saints are far more advanced. In this respect, however, I want to tell you with authority that both the hidden and the known saints have not realized the self. Do not be misled by the use of certain words and phrases. If anyone addresses you as dear self, do not be under the impression that he has achieved the goal of realization. The sum and substance of this long talk is that you either hold fast to my Dhamman and me only, or leave me altogether. Do not make any compromise. However, you are free to pay homage to and visit the shrines of my 5 perfect masters, Sai Baba, Upasni Maharaja, Hazrat Babajan, Tajuddin Baba, and Narayan Maharaj. Out of my 5 perfect masters, 4 do not have any representatives. Only Upasni Maharaj has a representative. She is Godavari Mai. She has a very pure heart, and there is no equal to her in this respect. You can go to Sakuri and pay your respects to her. She is very dear to me. She loves me very much. She is my beloved Yashoda. This does not mean that my 5 perfect masters do not have a chargeman and a close circle. Invariably, without any exception, every perfect master must necessarily hand over his charge to one man whom he makes as perfect as himself. Such a one is called the chargeman of the perfect master. Do not visit other ashrams or saints, because you cannot distinguish between a real saint and an imitation one. I also wish that you do not criticize or scandalize any person. If you happen to meet saints, real or imitation, by chance, you may pay respects to them, but do not run after them. If you have full faith in me, stick to me. Otherwise, leave me now once and for all. Baba asked, "Who will hold my Dhamman wholeheartedly to the end?" Everyone there raised their hands to express their willingness. But one man said, "Somehow or other, my heart cannot accept the idea of Paramatma becoming and living as a man on earth. I believe in Krishna, but only as a part of Paramatma. However, if like Arjuna I am blessed with Vishwaswarup Darshan, seeing the Avatar's universal body, I feel I will get the necessary conviction." Hearing this, Baba smiled and retorted, "So now we are bargaining in spirituality? I should give you some sort of vision so that you will believe in me 100%? That is a poor bargain. It was nothing short of weakness on my part as Krishna to have convinced Arjuna that I was divine by exposing my identity as Paramatma through Vishwaswarup Darshan." Baba continued to explain, by itself, any experience, small or great, ultimately amounts to 0 compared with God realization. Some lovers in the West who regard me as God incarnate write to me about their rare experiences. But those too have no real importance. Although it is heartening to have experiences, it is very dangerous to attach too much importance to them and to indulge in them. Baba ended the explanation and discussion of this subject by remarking, "I am sure that the points in question have been made sufficiently clear to you." Some of the men came forward and spontaneously offered monetary amounts. Baba instructed one of the Poona men to utilize most of the contributed amounts for the feeding of poor boys, and directed that a portion of the total contribution be sent for a newly opened center, but making it clear that he did not give money expecting work for him in return. Then he joked, "It is easier for my lovers to give their heads than to give money." Baba then spent some time discussing the activities of various groups and centers dedicated to him, stressing the importance of an attitude of unity and cooperation among his workers. He reminded the men, "If you want to further my cause, there is no escape but to become like dust in my work." There cannot be any compromise. Each of my lovers must become like dust. Then people of their own accord will flock around him, and his own life will radiate my message of love to others. After explaining to the attendees about the Sahavas congregation that was planned to be held at Mehrabad in February of 1958, Baba concluded the meeting by again lovingly stressing, "It is a fact that I am God. I am the highest of the high. I wish that those who raised their hands hold fast to my Daman for good. There is no need for my lovers to visit saints. Stick to me even during the phase of humiliation. Spread my message of love among all and become like dust in Baba's work."